Hi, Music 103A students. Dr. Schultz here. Hope you're doing well. And in this video today, I'm going to talk to you about voice leading to the same harmony. In other words, revoicing the same chord. And also voice leading chords that are a fourth or a fifth apart. And so what you'll want to start with here is page 86 in your textbook. And what I did is I just transferred the textbook right to the staff paper to give myself a little more space. So if you want to follow along on page 86 in your textbook, please do so. Okay, and what we're doing here is we are revoicing the same chord. You can see that these look like they're all in the key of C, since there's no key signature. And what we have here is a G chord going to another G chord, right? Notice that the root is doubled, G, G, two Gs, 1/3 and 1/5. And what we're going to do is we're going to move to the same chord. So we're going to revoice the same harmony. Now, when you're doing root position voice leading, you want to remember that you should be doubling the root under most circumstances. So that is in these chords that are in root position, this is a G chord with a G in the bass, right? G, B, D. You're going to double the root, which in this case is G. If you look at the next one, you can see that it's a D minor chord, D, F, A, and you can see that the root is doubled. The next one's an F chord, F, A, C, and you can see the F is doubled. Okay, of course, for triads, you only have 3 notes, so you do have to make a decision as to which tone, which note of the 3 in the triad you're going to double. And in root position, you want to double the root. Now that holds true for most circumstances. There actually is one exception to that rule, but we'll get to that in another video, another day. Okay, and when you're revoicing the same chord, you want to make sure that you double the root in both of them. So you see here the one we started with, we have 2 Gs, the root, 1/3 and 1/5. Now, of course, it almost goes without saying, but in root position, the root is the bass, right? Okay, now, what you want to do is move this chord to this chord and maintain the same doubling. So moving from here to here, we also want to have 2 roots in this chord. Now notice we're given the bass, tenor, and the alto and the soprano, and the bass is the same tone, of course, because we're going to the same chord in the same position, but here the soprano is changing to a different pitch. Now, there are definitely different guidelines when it comes to revoicing the same chord as opposed to moving to another harmony, either a fourth or a fifth apart, or a third down or a second up. And the rules go something like this. Given this note here, we could either keep it, so we could just keep it on G. We could move it up to the next chord member, which would be moving it up to B, or I could move it down to the next chord member, which would be moving it down to D. Now, a couple things. If we kept the G, notice that we'd have 3 Gs. We only want 2. So that's not going to work in this particular example. If I move this G up to the B, of course, the alto would be higher than the soprano, and that's a voice cross that we don't want to employ. And then the only other option, of course, is to move it to the D, and that's what we want to do here. Okay, so again, you can take this note and you can keep it. You can move it up to the next member of the chord, which would be a B, or you can move it down to the next chord member, which would be D. Now notice there is a 4th leap here, which is permissible when you're revoicing the same chord. When you're moving to a different chord, you do not want to leap anything greater than 1/3 in the soprano, alto, or tenor. We'll talk about that more later. But when you're revoicing the same chord, leaping this 4th is acceptable. And the reason why it's acceptable is because you're already hearing all the different members here, and so it's very natural just to sing from the G to the D because you're hearing the D as a part of this chord. All right, well, if we move the alto to the D, you can see that what we have are 2 Gs and 1 D, but we're missing the B, the 3rd. So again, when it comes to this tenor voice here, we can either keep the D, we can move it up to the next chord member, which would be a G, or we can move it down to the B. And of course, the decision we want to make here is move it down to the B because we want two roots, 1/3 and 1/5 in every chord. Two roots, 1/3, 1/5. Okay, let's do the next one here, and it's D minor chord. So we have two Ds, one F, one A, two roots, 1/3, 1/5. And again, notice the root in the second chord is the same because we're going to the same harmony. And again, given the F here, we could either keep it as a common tone, we can move it up to the next member, which would be A, or we can move it down to the next chord member, which would be D. Now, I do want to point out something to you here. We cannot move this all the way down to the A because you're not going to the next chord member, which is D, you're leaping through it. And you can see the leap there is much larger than a fourth. It also, of course, would create a spacing error. All right, so a lot of these actually have two answers that work. If you keep this F as a common tone, by the way, that's what that means. If you keep the same pitch in the same voice between two chords, that's known as a common tone. So if we keep the F, then we need an A, right? Because we have two Ds, two roots, 1/3, but we're missing the fifth, the A. So we can actually move this one down to the A. Right? So that's one answer. I'm actually going to erase this and then show you another answer. Okay, and here's another way that you can complete the same example. Remember that given this F here, we can keep it. We can move it up to the next chord member, which is A, or we can move it down to the next chord member, which is D. What if I move this up to the A? Well, now you can see what we have, two Ds, one A, but we're missing the F. But we can actually move this up to the F. So this is another possible answer for the same problem. A lot of them will have more than one answer that works. Just wanted to point something out here, and that is this is not a voice overlap. It's acceptable because it's the same pitch. So you can see here the alto has moved to the same note that was just left by the higher voice, the soprano, but it's the same pitch. An overlap is when you go higher than the soprano. All right, we'll keep moving here. And the next one, we have an F chord. And notice again, two roots, 1/3, 1/5. And the soprano is moving to the A. Of course, the bass is still in the F. So you can see we have one F and one A. That means we need another F and a C. And again, this one actually has two answers that work. I'll show you both. Given the C right here in the alto, we could keep the C. We could move it up to the next chord member, which is F, or we can move it down to the next chord member, which is A. Now, of course, we do not want another A because we don't want 2/3 here. We want two roots. But I could keep the C. Now you can see I have root, 3rd, 5th, and I need another root. I can move this A down to the F. Now, given this A, I could keep it. I can move it up to the C or down to the F, right? Now, when you have two pitches that are sharing, two voices rather, that are sharing the same pitch, you just use stem down and stem up on the same note head. So this means the bass and the tenor are singing that same pitch. Okay, that's one answer for that one. I'm going to, again, erase it and show you another possibility. Okay, and what if instead of keeping the C, we move the C up to the F? Now you can see we have two Fs, 1/3, but we're missing the C, and we can just move this up to the C. So that's another solution to that same exercise. All right, the next one is a C chord. You can see that we have two roots. 1/3 is up here in the 5th. By the way, it doesn't matter how the notes are distributed above the bass. The bass note still determines the inversion. So you can have any of the notes in any order up here, but this note, the bass note, determines the inversion symbol for that chord. And we're dealing with root position, so you can see the root is in the bass. Okay, so given the G, we could keep it. We could move it up to the next member, which is C, or we can move it down to the E. Well, what if we keep it? Now we have two C's and one G. We're missing the E, but you can get the E in the tenor part. Now, this is a little curious here. Notice how the ledger line is shared between the two voices. So this is in fact an E. It's sharing this ledger line from the bass part. So you can see there are two ledger lines, E in the tenor, C in the bass. Now, there actually are not any other possibilities for this one because if you were to keep this C, you'd have three Cs, and then you could move this to the E, but you'd be missing the G. The only other possibility to explore would be to move this to an E, but then you'd have to move this down to a G, and you can see if you move the tenor to a G, then you're going to have a voice crossing with the tenor lower than the bass. So this is the only one that works for that one. You might also notice that it's okay to move up or down an octave in the bass. You just have the same root position, but just an octave apart. It doesn't change the inversion at all. It also does not change the fact that you're just simply revoicing the same chord. Okay, and the last one on page 86 from the textbook is an A minor chord. You'll notice here we have the root in the bass, as expected, the other root here in the alto. Tenor has the third, soprano has the fifth. So again, given this A, we could keep it. We could move it up to the next member, which is C, or down to the next chord member, which is E. What if we keep it? Let's explore that possibility first. Well, we have two A's and one C. We're missing the E. We can quite easily move this tenor part up to the E. Now notice this time I did need the two ledger lines because there was not a ledger line written in the other part. Now this one also has two possible answers. So again, I'm going to erase it and then show you the other possibility. All right, the other possibility would be to move the A down to the E. Now notice that's moving it down to the next chord member, which is totally acceptable. It is a fourth leap, but that's okay. When you're revoicing the same chord, you can leap a fourth. Now we have one A, one C, one E. We need to double the root, and we can double it by moving the tenor down to the A. So that would be a second possible answer for that one. A lot of them have two possible answers. You just want to watch out to make sure you're not doing any voice crossing. Also, you want to make sure that you're doubling the root in both chords. Okay, and these are going to be some extra examples. And what I'd like you to actually do for practice right now is go ahead and pause the video after I'm done speaking here and copy these examples onto a piece of staff paper, complete them, and then come back and watch the rest of the first part of this video. Okay, let's take a look at the answers for the first one here. So given this E, we could keep it. We could move it up to the G or down to the C. So what if we moved it down to the C, two roots, one fifth, then we can get the third here. Now that is not the only answer. There's two answers at work. The other possibility would actually be to keep the E. I'm going to write them side by side so you can see both. You could keep that E and then move the G up to the C. Okay, so two possible answers there. Notice in my work here, you can go from this chord to this chord, or you could go from here to here. It's not meant to go from here to here. Okay, so here's answer one, here's answer two. Okay, the A minor one, notice how we have two roots, 1/3 and 1/5. What if we keep the E? See, now we have one A, one C, one E. We need two A's. So we could do that. Another possible answer, let me actually erase and show you the other possible answer here. Well, given this E in the alto, we could have moved it up to the A as well. We don't want to move it down to the C because then we'd have two C's. We want two A's, two roots. And then we can move this C up to the E. So that's the second possible answer for that one. Okay, and then the last one in D minor, you'll notice, or the D minor chord rather, two D's, two roots, 1/3, 1/5. And we don't want to keep the D because we already have two D's, but we could move it down to the A, the next chord member. Now we have two D's and an A, we need an F. That's the only answer that works for that one, because if you move this D up to the F here, you'd be crossing. You'd have the alto be higher than the soprano. That's a voice cross. So this is the only one that works for that example. All right, next we're going to look at page 89 in the textbook, self-test 6-2, and we're going to be looking at voice leading chords that are a fourth or a fifth apart. Now, as you read through the notes, I told you that there are three very common chord progressions in tonal music, in tonal harmony. The most common chord progression is moving up by a fourth. And those would be like 5 going to 1, right? And remember, when you count, you have to count 5 as the first one. So you go 5, 6, 7, 1. Right, that's up a fourth. Now remember, moving up a fourth and moving down a fifth will put you on the same root. So it doesn't matter if you go up a fourth, like this one's up a fourth, right? Or down a fifth, you're still going to end up with the same pitch either way. So think about this one is up a fourth. If I went down a fifth from here, I would just be on the G an octave lower. This one's down a fifth, but if I went up a fourth, I would just be on the B an octave higher. So you see it actually puts you on the same note, just in a different octave. Now, when you're voice leading chords that are a fourth or a fifth apart from one another, you're going to have one tone in common. By the way, I forgot to mention the other two common chord progressions are down by a third, like 1 going to 6 or 4 going to 2, and root movements of a second up, like 1 to 2 or 5 to 6. And that's the way the book presents the information. So first of all, we just learn how to voice the same chord, revoice the same chord. Now we're going to learn how to move a fourth or a fifth away. In the next exercise after this, in the next video, we'll learn how to move by a third going down. And then we'll also learn by voice leading by a second up. So again, 3 common chord progressions: up a fourth, down a third, and up a second. Now back to this. If we're moving up by a fourth or down by a fifth, you will have one tone in common between the two chords. Let's prove that by looking at this a little more closely. This chord is DFA. Now remember, if you're in root position, of course, the root is in the bass, so you can just say, I know this is a DFA chord. Same thing here, I know this is going to be G, B flat, and D. But of course, you can also rely on the Roman numeral. In the key of D, 1 is DFA, and 4 is G, B flat, D. Now, what is the common tone between this chord and this chord? The common tone is D. You see that? Okay, so the common tone between D minor and G minor is a D. And that's the first thing you want to look for in these chord progressions is, can you keep the common tone? Now remember, when you keep the common tone, that means you're going to keep it in the same voice. So here's the D. Can we keep it? Let's see if it works. Well, right now we have one G, one B flat, and one D. Remember, we want to double the G, right? We want two roots. So we can simply move this up to the G. Okay? And the rule goes something like this. Keep common tones when possible. Otherwise, move the other voices by step. By step is like this. F moving to G. That's by step. A leap of a third in the upper parts is permissible. So I can leap a third in the soprano or the alto or the tenor. But you do not want to leap a fourth or greater in those upper three parts. So no leaps of a fourth, soprano, alto, tenor. Remember that we were able to leap a fourth when we revoiced the same chord, but when we're going to another harmony, you do not want to leap a fourth in those upper three parts. Now the bass is exempt from that. If you're in root position, of course, if you're moving by a fourth or a fifth, you're going to have to go up a fourth or down a fifth. So the bass will leap around a little bit more. All right, the second one's in the key of A. And for a while, once you're getting used to the process here, you might want to jot down the letter names of the chords just so you can see what's going on. First of all, let's prove that all the chords are a fourth apart from one another. 6 up to 2. You have to count through 1 to get there, but 6, 7, 1, 2. That's up a fourth. Or, as the bass suggests, down a fifth. 2 to 5, up a fourth, right? 2, 3, 4, 5. And 5 to 1 is up a fourth or down a fifth. So all the chord progressions are a fourth away or a fifth away, depending on which direction you go. Now, don't forget your key signature. So this chord is F sharp, A and C sharp. This chord is B, D and F sharp. This chord is E, G sharp and B. And this one is A, C sharp and E. Now, by looking at the note names, you can tell quickly what the common tones are. So between 6 and 2, we have an F sharp in common. And between 2 and 5, we have a B in common. And between 5 and 1, we have an E in common. And of course, it's a little pattern. The root of one will be the fifth of the other because they are a fifth apart. Fourth up or fifth down. Now remember, the first thing you want to look for is, can you keep common tones? So between here and here, the F sharp is common. So let's see if we can keep it. Now remember, you're only keeping it as a common tone if you keep it in the same voice. So here it is in the alto part. We'll see if this works. We have two Bs and an F sharp. We're missing the D, right? So we want two roots, 1/3 and 1/5. Now you can see to get to the D, we have two options. We could leap down to the D here, or we could go up to it here. Now, of course, if I go down here, that's a fifth leap down, right? It's also going to be a spacing error between the tenor and the alto. However, if I move up to it, I still have a leap of a fourth. You see the A to the D is a leap of a fourth. So this is no good. So we looked to keep the common tone, but it didn't work out. The alternative is to leap a third in two parts. You can see that when you read the text. That's one of the other voice leading methods. By the way, I'll never have you identify the voice leading methods above these homeworks. So you don't have to worry about that part of the homework. Well, if I move the F sharp down to the D, you can see that I have that characteristic third leap. Now I have two Bs and a D. There's the third leap, right? The third leap down. I'm missing the F sharp. I can write the other tone here in the tenor part. Now I have the correct doubling. Two roots, 1/3, 1/5. So you can see what happens in chord progressions by a fourth or a fifth. When you can't keep the common tone, you're going to be leaping a third in the other parts. Remember, a leap of a third is fine. You just don't want to leap a fourth or greater. Okay, the common tone between 2 and 5 is the B. Notice it was already kept by the textbook for us. And we have an E and a B. We're missing a G sharp, the third, and we want to double the E. Now, of course, if I move this note down to the E, then I'll have to leap a fourth to get to the G sharp. well, a fourth up or a fifth down. So it makes a lot more sense to go up to the E here and then move the tenor to the G sharp. So you can see this is moving by step. So this is the method that the book talks about. Keep common tone, move other voices by step. This is no common tone kept, 2 leaps of a third. Again, if you follow the guidelines and the way I'm showing you how to do the voice leading, you don't have to worry about citing those particular methods of voice leading from the textbook. Okay, between 5 and 1, you can notice that the E is common. If I keep that common tone, it would be in the alto, right? Keep it in the same voice. Notice I have 2 A's and an E, I'm missing the C sharp. Well, if I move this down to the C sharp, I have all kinds of problems. First of all, it's a leap, big leap of a fifth here. I also have too much space here, and I overlapped the bass. So that's not going to work. All right, so we weren't able to keep the common tone, but what if we move the E down to the C sharp? Now we have A, C sharp. We need an E. We can move this one to the E. And notice here, it's on the same pitch as the previous bass, the tenor here. That's not an overlap. We're okay with that. So again, no common tone was able to be kept. 2 leaps of a third resulted. All right, here's the third one in the key of B flat major. So again, a first step might be just to write down the letter names of each chord. So here we go, C, E flat, G, F, A, C. Notice we have a B flat and an E flat in the key signature. B flat, D, F, and E flat, G, and B flat. 2 to 5 is up a fourth. 5 to 1 is up a fourth. 1 to 4 is up a fourth. That means you're going to have one common tone between each chord. Notice how it's the C's between 2 and 5, the F's between 5 and 1, and the B flats between 1 and 4. All right, so the common tone between 2 and 5 is the C. So you want to look to keep it. Now you can see that we have one F, one A, and one C. We want to double the root. So this one worked out quite nicely. Keep the common tone and move by step in the other parts. The common tone between 5 and 1 is the F. Let's see if we can keep that. Two roots, 1/5, we need 1/3. We can move to the third in the tenor. So that's the smoothest voice leading you can do, is when you're able to keep the common tone and move the other voices by step. Common tone between here and here is the B flat, but notice the book did not keep that common tone for us. And we have a root and a third. We need another root, which is E flat, and the B flat. Now, of course, if I move this one up to the E flat, I have nowhere to move the F. I'd also have to leap to the B flat to get it. But if I move this voice to the B flat, then I can move the alto to the other E flat. So notice again that in each one of these chords, we have 2 roots, 1/3 and 1/5. Okay, here's the fourth one. Now this one's in E minor. Notice how the D sharp is marked in the leading tone in the key of E minor for the 5 chord. 5 to 1 is up a fourth. 1 to 4 is up a fourth. Now 4 to 1 is actually down a fourth or up a fifth. We're going to learn later that 4 can progress to 1, very common chord progression. Okay, same kind of thing here. B, D sharp, F sharp for the 5. Don't forget your key signature. E, G, B for 1. A, C, E, E, G, B. Very easy to identify the notes that are in the chord because you can just go from the bass B, D sharp, F sharp, E, G, B, A, C, E, E, G, B. Common tones, again, the B's are common, the E's are common, and then because this is up a fifth and not up a fourth, notice how the fifth of one is the root of the other. Kind of breaks the pattern a little bit there. Notice how we have two E's already. We need another G and a B. Look to keep that common tone. So let's keep the common tone here in the tenor. We have two roots and one fifth. Now we need the third. So that worked out well. We were able to keep the common tone and move the other voices by step. You want the smoothest connection possible because you want to make it as singable as possible. It's all about singability. And a lot of times the more simple or the easier it is, the better off the voice leading is. Okay, between 1 and 4, you can see the E is kept as a common tone already for us. And we have the root and the fifth. We need another root and the third. Now, of course, if I move this to the A, we'll have to leap to the C in this voice. So let's move to the A here. Then we can write the C in this part. So common tone kept by step in the other voices. By the way, notice how I'm writing the same rhythm in the inner parts that are in the outer parts. So here we had a quarter note, and I wrote quarter notes. And here we have half notes, so I wrote half notes. You want to mimic the same rhythm as the soprano and the bass. Okay, between here and here, again, the E is common, so we can keep that. We have two E's. We need a third and a fifth. We're actually just going to move right back to this voicing. So here's two roots, 1/3, 1/5. All right, I just wanted to go back and play these examples for you so you can hear what they sound like. The first one in D minor. That sounds like this. You can hear that common tone in the tenor part. A very smooth connection between those two chords. Here's number 2 in A major. Here's a third one in B flat major. Again, listen for those common tones. And then the F here. Okay, and the fourth one in E minor. And you can hear the B common tone between chord 1 and 2. And then between 1 and 4. So when done correctly, you have a good voicing of that chord, the good up and down sound. But you also have good voice leading from one chord to the next. Multidimensional. So you want to make sure you're doubling the correct root in this case, the root of the chord, making the correct doubling choice. And then also following the other guidelines in terms of not making large leaps in the upper parts. All right, what I'd like you to do at this point is go ahead and pause the video, copy these two down on a piece of staff paper, numbers 5 and 6. This is on page 89 of your textbook. Go ahead and pause it and attempt these two examples. All right, let's go over the answers on these two. So in the key of F, this chord, of course, is F, A, C, B flat, D, F, F, A, C, C, E, G. Common tones. You can see that these chords are a fifth up from one another, and that's why the fifth of one is the root of the other. Keep the common tone between here and here, it's the F. Now we have two roots. I'm sorry, we have one root, 1/3, 1/5. We need the second root here. Now we have two roots, 1/3, 1/5. Okay, between here and here, the F is common. See if you can keep it. Two Fs, one A. Then we need a C. Two roots, 1/3, 1/5. Notice we were able to keep common tone and move by step in the other voices. Keep the common tone, move by step. This one actually had a leap in it of a fourth. If the book gives you a leap of a fourth, of course, then you just have to voice lead accordingly. There are occasions where you will be forced into leaping a fourth in these inner parts, but typically you can avoid that. All right, now, between here and here, the C is common. But notice if we keep the C, we're going to have three Cs. We don't want three Cs, we want two Cs, two roots, 1/3 and 1/5. If I move this F to the E, you can see that I'll have to leap to the G in the other voice. Leap into the G here is not only a leap that we want to avoid, but it also creates parallel fifths. You see the F to the C is a fifth, and the C to the G is a fifth. So of course we want to avoid that. What if we move the F to the G and the C up to the E? Remember, a third leap is fine. You want to preserve the two roots, the 1/3 and the 1/5. Okay, and then here's the answer to number 6. B flat, D, F for this chord. F, A, C. B flat, D, F. E flat, G, B flat. And B flat, D, F. Up a fifth, up a fourth, up a fourth, and up a fifth. Or down a fourth. Either one's the same, right? Okay, keep the common tone between here and here. It's going to be the F. So here we have two Fs, one A, and we need the C, right? All right, and then we can keep the F common tone. We have two B flats and one F. We need the D. Okay, and then we can keep the B flat common tone. Well, we looked to keep it, but it's not possible. The book did not keep it. So we need another E flat and the B flat. And again, if you move this one to the E flat, you'll have nowhere to move this voice without leaping or crossing. Between here and here, the B flat's common again, but we already have two B flats, so we don't want a third one here. But we do need a D and an F. Okay. All right, and I wanted to play for you numbers 5 and 6 as well. Here's F major, number 5. And number 6 in B flat major.